If we are ever going to get back to the old America, that's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas, and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it. That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5, isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say.
In the latest episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher delivered another sharp criticism of the political left, arguing that they're too caught up in what he sees as woke distractions. He warns that at a time when the country's future feels uncertain, the gap between the left and right is more noticeable and growing faster than ever. Maher said the U.S. can only live up to its potential if the left lets go of its current ideological battles. His comments were direct, unapologetic, and hard to ignore. Here's what he had to say.
But as it is so late in the game, let's just go right to the granddaddy of bargains now. The left will seriously quash all their loony woke, and the right will stop the slide into autocracy. That's really the only card left to play.
I'll roll the clip in a minute, but first I have to say, I'm completely with Maher on this one. If the left truly wants to bring people together, it needs to drop its obsession with woke politics. This isn't about shutting down progressive ideas. It's about acknowledging that this extreme approach is pulling the country further apart instead of helping it come together. That said, the right has its share of faults too. Nobody's pretending otherwise. But as Maher points out, a major part of today's political gridlock comes from the left's unwillingness to meet others halfway. And trust me, he's about to spell out exactly what he means.
The basic problem we have in America is conservatives think the liberals are insane, and they're not completely wrong. Now, I don't think most liberals are insane, but neither do they make it clear they disapprove of the ones who are, and their cowardice in not marginalizing their own crazies has been their downfall. I couldn't get Neil deGrasse Tyson, a genius scientist and preeminent scientific voice in the media, to agree that it was ridiculous for Scientific American and The Atlantic to be claiming that separating sports by sex doesn't make sense. Yes, it does. Actually, it makes perfect sense.
Maher doesn't hold back here. He goes straight at it. From his perspective, the woke wing of the left has drifted far away from basic reality. He sees it as confused, unreasonable, and disconnected. What makes it even more startling, he says, is that many of the people who should be the voices of reason, academics, scientists, thinkers, cultural critics, seem to have set aside logic in favor of ideology. It feels like practical judgment has been replaced with a set of rigid beliefs that fall apart the moment you look at them closely. When you listen to some of the policies, arguments, and moral campaigns coming from that group, it's hard not to be taken aback. The pieces don't fit. The explanations don't hold up. And yet, they always manage to come up with complicated defenses, stretching logic to justify positions that make little sense. Maher's warning hits directly. When an entire movement trades reason for fantasy, you don't get progress, you get disorder, all dressed up as moral righteousness.
And there's a lot of stuff like that on the left. And when conservatives see it, they say, I'm sorry, we're just not going to go along with reinventing society, often pointlessly, even if we have to cancel democracy to do it. That's what they're saying. They see gender as only a construct and sex is assigned at birth, and they say, we're not doing that. Transing kids by self-diagnosis with no age limit, no parental notification, and no acknowledgement of social contagion, not doing it.
Think about the point being raised here. From this perspective, it seems unreasonable to claim that gender is purely a social idea when, in everyday life and in science, men and women are understood to have real biological differences. To the critics Maher is talking about, these aren't imaginary distinctions, they're part of observable reality. Yet, he argues, the woke left often shuts down the discussion entirely, treating certain facts as if acknowledging them is somehow offensive. Maher also highlights another concern, the belief that children, who are considered mature enough to vote, drive, or drink, should be able to make major medical choices that could affect them permanently. Questioning this can quickly get someone labeled as extreme, which he sees as upside down and reckless. To him, it shows how ideology has overtaken basic judgment. His message is blunt. Ignoring biological realities and involving children in political fights isn't compassion. It's a dangerous break from common sense.
Asylum now covers any reason for anyone to come to America. Not doing it. Homelessness is a lifestyle. Natural immunity doesn't count anymore. Whiteness is toxic. This is in women's prisons. Welcoming the Intifada. We're not doing it.
Maher then pushes further, running through a list of woke positions he believes the left needs to let go of. And in his view, none of this is complicated. He argues that dropping some of these ideas would actually make it easier to deal with the problems the left says it wants to fix. Homelessness is one of his main examples. Instead of treating it like just another lifestyle or allowing entire blocks to turn into tent camps, he says the focus should be on why people end up in those situations to begin with. That means getting people into stable housing and giving them meaningful help for addiction, mental health issues, or financial struggles. To him, that's what real progress looks like. Maher's point is that leaving people in tents isn't compassion, it's neglect. And he argues that it doesn't just hurt those living on the streets, it affects everyone who has to navigate the declining conditions around them.
If we are ever going to get back to the old America, that's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it. That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5, isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say
Maher then turns his attention to what he calls the woke crowd, criticizing them for trying to impose their beliefs on everyone else. His point is simple. People are different. Not everyone is going to think the same way, live the same way, or accept the ideas this group treats as unquestionable. And that should be okay. He sees instead is a movement that struggles with disagreement and expects full alignment. In contrast, he says most people are focused on practical concerns, strong communities, safe neighborhoods, stable families, not every new identity debate or trend framed as activism. To him, forcing others to follow along with ideas they don't share doesn't represent progress. It feels more like control dressed up as compassion. Maher's message lands clearly. If the left wants to rebuild trust, he believes it needs to stop telling everyone else how to think, speak, and live. Real freedom, he argues, comes from having choices, not from constant woke oversight.
You can't just say math is racist, queers for Palestine, looting is cool, healthy at any weight. If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie. You can't just say.
Maher wraps up by stressing something he believes should be obvious. You can't invent your own version of reality and expect everyone else to fall in line. In his view, facts aren't tools to reshape around an ideology. They're grounded in evidence, logic, and the real world. Feelings or trends don't change them. He argues that parts of the left have slipped into an echo chamber where certain ideas get repeated, so often they start to feel unquestionable, even when they don't match reality. Maher's message is that it's time to step out of that bubble and engage with the world as it actually is. Only then, he says, can people have productive debates and find practical solutions. His bottom line is straightforward. Progress can't come from denial. When facts are ignored, reason disappears, and with it, any hope of a society that works together.
I mean, you can, but it doesn't make it true because you're not Harry Potter. Smug self-righteousness in the defense of some of the dumbest ideas to ever come down the pike is not a formula that's really working for you. Because here's one thing I can promise every liberal in this country. The Democrats can win every election from now until forever. And the people who now hold the reins of power will not give a shit and will not give it back if they think you're still nutty.
Even though I don't believe the idea that conservatives would refuse to give up power if liberals lost an election, I do think that putting liberals in charge leads to trouble. From my perspective, we've already seen what happens when their agenda dominates. Policies that sound promising often fall apart in practice. Symbolic gestures take the place of real solutions, and leadership focused more on emotions than evidence ends up steering the country. If voters want to go down that road again, that's their call. But we shouldn't act like the outcomes are a mystery. Many people remember the last stretch of leadership influenced by woke ideas and felt it left the country with higher tensions, weaker institutions, and ongoing cultural fights oh yes, people can choose that direction if they want. But they shouldn't be surprised if the consequences feel familiar.
Let's make one last stab at a grand bargain between the two sides that hate each other so much. America used to do this all the time, make bargains, and I've suggested many myself, like you stop saying fetuses are the same as babies, and we'll stop saying trans women are the same as biological women. You stop saying alternative facts, and we'll stop saying my truth. You stop saying thoughts and prayers, and we'll stop with the land acknowledgments.
Let's pause for a second. From this point of view, the two sides in this debate aren't operating on the same level. One is seen as grounded in reality, while the other is viewed as relying on emotion and wishful thinking. The argument here is that a fetus shouldn't be treated as something vague or abstract. It's understood as a developing human life, with forming organs and the potential to become a person. Ending that development, in this view, isn't just a personal choice, it's stopping a life in progress. That's considered a very different issue from adults identifying differently from their biological sex and competing in women's sports. Tio the speaker. These topics don't belong in the same category. One involves what they see as protecting the most vulnerable form of human life. The other involves identity questions that, in their opinion, conflict with fairness and biological distinctions. So when Maher places them side by side, the argument here is that he's making an unfair comparison. Not every issue fits together, and this example is seen as proof of that.
You admit there's no such thing as voter fraud, and we'll admit that getting a picture ID isn't really that hard to do. Stuff like that.
It's true. Both the left and the right need to find common ground if America wants to move forward. But there's a key point. Compromises can't be built on lies, illusions, or politically convenient stories. They have to be rooted in truth, facts, logic, and reality. That's the only foundation strong enough to hold a nation together. If we try to paper over differences with flimsy or false ideas, we're just kidding ourselves. Those shortcuts might work for a while, but they're weak and eventually crumble under scrutiny. Real unity isn't about giving in to fantasies. It's about rallying around enduring principles, reason, morality, and common sense. Without that, the country will keep getting stuck in culture wars and endless divisions, held back by ideas that can't stand the test of time. Maher's message is direct. America can't survive on illusion. The left needs to let go of woke fantasies. The right has to face its own shortcomings, and both sides must meet on the common ground of truth and reality. Unity built on falsehoods isn't unity. It's a ticking time bomb. If the country truly wants to come together, it has to choose facts over ideology. Anything less is national self-sabotage. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.